For the first time in the admittedly short history of doing these metal reviews, I am at a loss for an emotion regarding this album. I can't decide whether I like it or not. On one hand, some of the melodies and atmosphere that the album created were absolutely gorgeous. But on the other hand, it felt like such a slog of an album to get through. Yeah, it's time for another metal review, and today we're going to take a look at Swedish goth metal band Tribulation and their new album, Down Below. Now, this is an album that sort of grew on me a bit. When I first took a listen to it, I thought, oh dear, here comes another Cradle of Filth-like album. But then I got into the meat of the album, and I must say, there were a lot of things that impressed me. From the production to the poetic verse in the lyrics, the songs just sort of hung around like mist in the air. Now, maybe that's what a band like Tribulation is going for. If so, then they hit the nail on the head. The gothic atmosphere created on the album is extremely prevalent. It slaps you in the face with how dark it is, and the vocals and overall aura of the album only help to generate that. For instance, the song Subterranea begins with light piano. That's right, a metal track that begins with light piano. I know that it's goth metal, but that really, for me, it takes the goth factor and ramps it up to 10 before the band starts to pummel you with riffs. As far as the music itself is concerned, for any of you who might have never heard these guys before, it's sort of like a cross between Black Sabbath and Cradle of Filth, especially when it comes to guitar leads and solos. Now, whenever the lead guitarist starts going off, he is intentionally thrown higher in the mix than the other instruments. A lot of bands have their albums mixed to where, while the solo is still audible, it's at basically the same level as the rest of the instruments. That's not the case with this album. When a solo does kick in, it sounds just a bit like you're listening to Black Sabbath, or maybe even a darker version of Blue Oyster Cult or some 70s metal band, due to the overall fuzziness and tone of the guitar. Then, after the solo is over, you drop right back into that gothic, Cradle of Filth type territory, only without Danny Filth's falsetto. Now we get to the criticism of the album. It's way too slow for a non-Doom album. It felt like a bit of a chore to get through. You know, I expect things like that out of Bell Witch, Pentagram, Hooded Menace, Skepticism, and bands like that. But out of Tribulation? A goth metal band? I didn't really expect that. Another thing I felt went wrong here was the use of melody. There is a bit of melody on the album, but there's just not enough. They toy around with minor keys and melodic elements, but those take a backseat in favor of the overall atmosphere and all-around black metal-like thinking. It didn't work for me. It sucks that I can't fully enjoy this album because I was really looking forward to it. I heard some stuff of their last album, Children of the Night, and I enjoyed it immensely. Unfortunately, the gothic atmosphere on the album overshadows the melodious part, and that's something I don't forgive too easily. Some bands get this balance of melody and atmosphere right, but Tribulation, on this album at least, is not one of them. Some of the songs were enjoyable. Here Be Dragons was a lot of fun, as they brought a bit of a jazz element in amidst their darker properties. That was something innovative, but not pretentious. A lot of these progressive bands like to take a song and then dream theaterize it by making a lot of, frankly, unnecessary note and time signature changes and then put it out on the market. However, when you do that, it does become very pretentious. And if there's one thing Tribulation is not, it's pretentious. However, 2 or 3 good songs do not a good album make, and it reflects in my score here. While I don't hate the album, I have incredibly mixed feelings about it. Like I said, on one hand, you had this wonderful atmosphere and 2 or 3 good songs, but on the other, it was very slow, and it felt like a chore to listen to. Not an album of the year contender, not a terrible album. It was sort of like Watane's album, just sort of there. So I'm giving Tribulations Down Below a 75 out of 100 on the yearly perfection scale. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next week with another metal review.